Now, this next one is going to be huge. The White House is set to host a UFC event next year as part of July 4 celebrations to mark the 250th anniversary of the country's founding. Here is UFC boss Dana White.
It is definitely going to happen. I talked to him last night, him being the president, and I'm flying out there at the end of this month, and I'm going to sit down and walk him through, all the plans and the renderings, and we're going to start deciding what he wants and doesn't want. But yeah, it's definitely going to happen.
Josh, this is going to be huge.
Yeah, Dana White is about as MAGA as it gets, right? So I mean, the personnel definitely fits. Donald Trump has a very long history of being involved in mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling. I mean, this goes back to Donald Trump's days as kind of a figure of the New York tabloids in the 1980s, 1990s there. So it's very fitting that he would do this. Frankly, now that I think about it out loud, it's kind of funny that he never actually did this during his first term. So better late than never, I guess, to an extent. That's going to be a hot ticket. I mean, I assume that they're going to do it in the White House lawn. You can't literally do it in the White House because you can't have any spectators. So I assume they'll do some sort of stands there, and that's going to be a really, really, really hot ticket. That's going to be a really, really attractive event there. This July 4th coming up next year, which is going to be the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country. It's going to be a celebration like none other. And, I kind of shudder at the thought. What if Kamala Harris had won? What if Kamala Harris had won? And on the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, we would be talking about how our country was founded with white guilt, with the original sin of slavery. It was conceived in bigotry and hatred and homophobia, transphobia, blah, 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 blah. And then on the other hand, we're just going to have an absolute banger of a fireworks show. We're getting ready to host the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in a few years. And then on July 4th, we're going to have a UFC fight to top it off. I mean, that's the America that I want. That's the Donald Trump. That's the America, frankly, that I voted for. I think that's what most Americans want as well.
Oh, look, absolutely. America is back. And I tell you what, that celebration next year is going to be one for the ages. You can tell already. Now, look, US stocks have hit a record high as inflation holds steady over in the States at 2.7% in July, despite Trump's tariffs. Here's a breakdown.
When you look at the key categories that we always look at, energy, food, and shelter, energy fell by 1.1%. That was largely driven because of gas prices falling in the month of July by 2.2%. Look at that food. I mean, this is where people spend their money, right? Food every single day. Food flat, 0%, and actually down at the grocery store.
Josh, what do these latest figures suggest?
Yeah, CNN, I presume that they would have liked to have seen a massive spike there to therefore blame it on Donald Trump and his tariff policy. I think a lot of people owe Donald Trump a pretty substantial apology when it comes to his rollout of his tariffs there, the reciprocal tariffs, his whole approach to political economy and trade in general. People said that this is going to get us back. Well, I mean, perhaps to 1979 era Jimmy Carter inflation, but a lot of people said that it might be even worse than Joe Biden just a few years ago. I mean, it was the summer of 2022, just 3 years ago here in the U.S., that inflation reached 9.1%. People were saying that Donald Trump is going to get dangerously close to that. And what do you know? Nothing happened. A total, absolute nothing burger. And by the way, it's not just inflation that is being totally constant. Trump is bringing in historical revenue to the U.S. Treasury when it comes to the actual revenue from these tariffs as well there. Because most presidents have kind of shied away from tariff policy in recent decades. Donald Trump's bringing it back. He's getting in more revenue without seeing much of an effect, if at all, when it comes to inflation. The stock market is soaring there. It's almost as if the billionaire guy who has run the Trump organization for 30, 40 years kind of sort of maybe knows what he's doing when it comes to managing the economy. And it would have been really, really nice to have seen, in retrospect, a little bit more humility on the part of the talking heads on left-wing cable news networks when they were confidently predicting with a very high degree of certainty that Donald Trump would crash the economy, when we now know it to simply not be the case.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is the work of an America First agenda, I guess, as Trump had promised. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been excluded from peace talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin on Friday, and now we know why. The White House press secretary Caroline Levitt confirmed it's because the Russian leader extended the invitation to meet. So, Josh, basically it was because this meeting was at the request of Putin himself. How will this work in Trump's favour in being able to really suss out whether Vladimir Putin is serious or not about ending this war?
Well, it strikes me, first of all, as a little petty on behalf of Volodymyr Zelensky that he's saying no, effectively simply because this was Putin's idea in the first place. I mean, who cares, frankly, whose idea it was? I mean, the notion that we could have all three men in the same room, I personally was very excited about that. As someone who thinks that this war has gone on for way, way too long, as someone who has been calling for U.S. statesmanship and diplomacy to try to find a viable off-ramp, I was hoping that Zelensky and Putin would finally, once for all, get in the same room. So I guess that will wait for another day. Look, Trump has really amped up the rhetoric against Vladimir Putin over the past couple of months. He has had a mixed record historically when it comes to Russia. Some people said he's been a little too friendly rhetorically. The policy has actually always been consistent. He's been very tough on Russia, really going back to his first term. And now the rhetoric is really kind of fully matching the policy as well there. I don't think Putin's going to be particularly receptive there. So it'll be very interesting to see if Trump can actually try to finagle him and actually try to get him to make some sort of concessions there. The basic roadmap for what a deal in Russia-Ukraine, what it actually looks like, to me, I think it's pretty common sense. It's going to require painful concessions on both parties. This is where leaders come in. I mean, this is the ultimate kind of deal here. You know, Trump literally wrote the art of the deal here. He's had amazing success, by the way, on the world stage already. We had this recent Armenia-Azerbaijan peace deal at the White House just last Friday. There was Congo and Rwanda, India and Pakistan, Israel and Iran after the 12-day war. On and on we go. He's had an amazing, amazing run of diplomatic successes trying to foster and secure peace in a very turbulent part of the world there. We'll see if he can do this big deal with Russia and Ukraine, but I definitely would not discount the possibility of it.
Well, I think the world's going to be waiting, standing by with bated breath to see what comes out of this all-important meeting this week. Josh Hammer, good to catch up. Thanks so much for your time.
You bet. Thank you.